Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a delicious Puerto Rican style garlic butter chicken, or as we call it, pollo al ajillo. This chicken is buttery and full of flavor. Now let's start with the ingredients that we're going to need. Here I'm going to be using 1 pound of chicken breast, which is about 1.5 breasts. But remember that this will vary depending on the size of the breast. To season the meat, we only need 3/4 of a teaspoon of adobo and 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper. We also use a large yellow onion, but you could also use a white onion or a red onion. We need 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil and 2 tablespoons of butter, but you could use more if you like. And one of the most important ingredients, the garlic. We add 1 teaspoon of garlic paste and 4 cloves of garlic. Later, I'll go into detail and explain why I use garlic in 2 different ways. We start the recipe by cutting the onion. The first thing I want to say is that if you don't like onions, you could skip this step and simply leave it out. Now, if you like onions like I do, use a large onion. First, peel it and cut it in half. Next, you want to chop each half of the onion into wedges that are at least 1/2 inch thick. I think this is the perfect way to cut the onions for this recipe because the ends of the onion will soften, but the center will still have a nice crunch to it. But this is just a preference, so feel free to cut the onion however you like. Next, we'll do the part that I like to do the least, which is peeling the garlic. Listen, I've tried all those so-called tips, tricks, and hacks for peeling garlic that you see online, and yet not a single one has worked for me. So if you know of any tips that really work, please let me know in the comments so I could try them out. What I do to make it easier is to crush the garlic a little bit with the side of my knife. And by crushing them a little bit, this will release the skin just enough to make the peeling part easier. Then I just cut off the rough tip of the garlic. Then I peel them easily because after this, the skin almost comes off on its own. Then we cut the garlic. The way I like to do this is by first cutting the garlic in half lengthwise. I turn the garlic over and begin chopping it into pieces to about 1/4 of an inch thick. I want them to be not too big or not too small. Now, just like the onion, you could chop the garlic however you like, but you don't want to make them too big because then they won't cook completely, and at the end you will end up with a raw center. Now, I want to explain why my recipe uses garlic in 2 different ways. And the reason is that depending on how the garlic is cut, it will give a different flavor to the recipe. The chopped garlic cooks and becomes soft and kind of sweet, and the garlic paste adds a strong, spicier flavor. It is the one that is the more noticeable in taste all over the recipe. And if you use fresh garlic, I believe it will taste even better. But if all you got is the store-bought garlic in a jar, then that's fine too. For all means, use it. Now let's prepare the chicken. The first thing we always want to do is clean the meat. The first thing I like to do is to trim any excess fat of the entire chicken. Remember that when the fat is stuck on top, it comes off easily if we scrape it off with the knife. And this way we remove less meat. We'll repeat this entire process with the whole chicken until the entire chicken is clean. And then we cut the meat. Generally, the chicken breasts you get at the supermarket are gigantic. Of course, this is depending on where you live. But in the States, this is usually the case. So the way you cut them will vary depending on the size of each piece. But generally, the first thing I like to do is to cut the chicken in half. Then I cut that half diagonally into thin pieces, in pieces that are about 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick. This is important because first, it will help cook the meat more quickly, and this is good because it saves us time. And second, it helps the meat to cook evenly and ensures that the meat won't be raw in the inside. The great thing about this recipe is that it's very versatile. Chicken breast is what is typically used, but you could also use boneless chicken thighs and simply follow the same steps. Sometimes it's even better to use the thighs because they tend to be more economical. But even better is that the thighs are the cut of the chicken with the most fat, which tends to be juicier, and you could avoid the risk of the meat drying out, as it can happen with breast if you overcook it. Now we season the chicken. We add that 3/4 of a teaspoon of adobo seasoning and the 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Then we mix it until the entire chicken is seasoned. Now, you might think the chicken needs a little more seasoning, but sometimes less is more, and this is the case. Because here, the thing that is going to shine the most in flavor is going to be the garlic. And look how good it looks. Trust the process that in the end, you will have a delicious chicken recipe. Next, we need a large pot or a caldero like the one I'm using here. We'll set it over medium-high heat and add 2 tablespoons of oil. Here, I use vegetable oil, but you could use any oil of your choice. A good oil to use is coconut oil or olive oil. Then we add all the chicken, and we'll try not to crowd it. Try to separate each piece so that each piece browns well. We're going to cook this for 6 minutes on each side. Now, if you use chicken thighs, you could cook them a little longer on each side because they'll still stay juicy. They can hold more heat. What we are really trying to do here is to cook the chicken and give it a nice golden brown color. Then we need to increase the heat to a medium-high heat. Then I add the onion. You could also add the other vegetables you like, such as green peppers or Cubanelle peppers. And although it's not common, you can add finely chopped vegetables like carrots or mushrooms. And believe me, this addition is super delicious. Then you just have to add the butter and add all the garlic. And cook this for 3 minutes while stirring to prevent it from burning. You'll see how the onion begins to absorb the butter and it will soften. The same thing happens with the chopped garlic. As you know, this recipe is a Puerto Rican style garlic butter chicken, which is different than the classic American version because we use adobo, which gives it another flavor. It is also different from the Spanish version, which uses white wine, and it is also different from the garlic chicken we know from the Chinese restaurants. And this is how we make a delicious garlic butter chicken in less than 25 minutes. I'll be leaving the recipe link below in the description. Buen provecho. I hope you like it.